Very good, thank you. Welcome everyone to the Committee of the Whole meeting for the City of Lacombe, Monday, March the 4th. It is now 5:30 p.m. and I will call the meeting to order. You all had an opportunity to look at the agenda. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if I can add a item for just information about a conversation I had
Certainly.
in regards to housing.
Okay, how about if we put that under presentations? We're going to go 3A, a councillor presentation.
Sure, thank you.
And that's just information only?
That's correct.
Very good. CEO Gowdy.
Thanks, Creasy. I was hoping to add an in-camera labor item.
Legal?
Labor.
Labor? Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll move that we accept the agenda as
amended?
amended.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Very
I
good.
was thinking I was going to add one too, but no, I don't want to do that.
You want to keep that one? Nope. Keep her tonight. CEO Gowdy, something else? Nope. Very good. And everybody's good with the motion then. I see no other lights on. Please go ahead and vote. And that is unanimously in favor. Thank you, everyone. And because you are numbered under presentations, Councillor Dallas, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So this is just in regards to a phone call I had with another member of council from another community. And I just thought it would be nice to share with everybody here instead of finding another avenue to do it. It was in regards to housing and developing housing in their community. And this community has taken to the strategy of actually building homes in partnership with developers. And so they are splitting the costs and then as a result also splitting the revenue from these. And this wasn't meant to be a way to solve affordable housing, as that's not what they chose. They were just choosing to build houses, but they were building for a year, and it sounded like that was adding close to 10% new development in their community as a result of this. And the homes were selling, and it was received quite positively, and it also seemed like it was almost a net zero for the community in terms of costs outside of some administration costs of setting up the program. So it was just something I was interested in hearing about and discussing with them and trying to, look at other options and see how that works in other communities. So it was just, that's all I wanted to share.
Appreciate that, Councillor Dallas. I would suggest that perhaps you touch base on that item with CEO Gowdy. If it's something you're interested in pursuing further or obtaining more information, and it can be brought forward to council in a more formal way at a later date.
Thank you.
Very good. So I think we're going to move right into reports to committee. Technician Carpenter and Manager, what's Nancy's last name? Manager Hackett, thank you both for being here. Whenever you're prepared to begin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Creasy and members of council. Thank you very much for your time here tonight. So we are here to discuss the Planning and Development Services fee schedule review. This meeting is in follow-up to the January 22nd regular council meeting, where a proposed strategy for the Planning and Development Services fee schedule review was first presented. At that meeting, administration recommended that the fees be increased to the municipal comparator median. However, council had expressed the desire for more information and have further discussions about the fees prior to supporting that motion. Through the conversations today, administration aims to gain a clear understanding of council's views, to hear consideration on proposed changes, and to answer any of your questions. So planning and development services fees fall into two different categories. First, we have the safety codes fees. So these cover the building, electrical, gas, and plumbing permits. These fees are shared 50-50 with a third-party contractor and are intended to cover the cost of permit issuance and inspections. Safety codes fees are outlined by the Safety Codes Council, which generally makes them consistent across the province. However, there is still discretion for each municipality. Planning and development fees cover development permits and deposits, statutory plan amendments, subdivision plans, preparation of agreements, development enforcement, and file searches. The city retains the planning and development fees to cover or contribute to costs such as advertising, mail-outs, or public engagement. These fee types are determined by each municipality based on the services that they provide. So at the previous council meeting, research was presented from different comparative municipalities, and at council's direction, that list was expanded to include more regional municipalities. So in total, 17 different municipalities' fee schedules were compiled and reviewed, and 8 of these were located within the Central Alberta region. The full list of municipalities and the compiled data is included as an attachment to the report. Excuse me. When looking back at previous fee reviews, the last time that they were reviewed was in 2015. And at that time, several fee categories were added in, and then most fees were increased between 50 to 100%. One of the drivers for this increase was that the long time frame from the previous review. So the previous review before that one was back in 2008. So although the review occurred in 2008, only the fee types were changed. The fee values actually remained the same. So based on our historical research, it appears that planning and development fees have only been increased 2 times since the early 2000s. So for today's discussion, we are highlighting the 5 different questions posed at the January 22nd council meeting and using these as topics to spark conversation around the fee review. So the first topic, objective for planning and development services fees, is perhaps one of the most important. So it's clear that all municipalities reviewed collect fees for planning and development related services, just as we do in Lacombe. But what are the goal for these fees? Currently, there is no defined objective for fee collection. So different possible objectives were outlined in the report to assist in conversation, not to necessarily set a hard objective. So we could consider ideas such as revenue generation. Should fees be funded by taxes, or is cost recovery important? Should development pay for itself, or should it be supported by the tax base? We look at fee competitiveness. Do we align our fees with other municipalities or set them apart by being higher or lower? Should the city minimize home construction and land development costs and instead use taxes to fund planning and development services revenue and consider an investment in the community? Or we have the fee type varieties. So should fees be proportionate to the effort and cost of the services? Should they offer flexibility and variety? Or should we stand out by having few fees? And then looking at promoting growth that aligns with our city plans. So the city has different statutory plans that are used in part to guide our future development. Should fees be used as a tool to drive this desired development, or should different options be considered? Another key item would be the tolerance for an increase. So for this process, administration really considered the strategic plan and how planning and development services can use fees to sustainably manage community resources. So using this priority as a guide, we are proposing to evaluate each fee category independently. So as previously mentioned in 2015 during the fee review, the fees were increased between 50 to 100%, and that was across the board to both planning and development and safety codes fees. However, with this review, we're taking a bit of a different approach and evaluating each fee category on its own merit. This allows for a little bit more discretion to adjust the fees as deemed appropriate. So currently, 66% of planning and development fees are below our regional municipalities median. So although some are on par, some are higher, the majority are lower. So as these fees are fully under the City of Lacombe purview, council could consider different approaches, such as only increasing fees that are significantly lower or phasing in increases over several years. So to put a little bit of perspective on the planning and development fees, the current rate for a permitted use development permit for a residential development is $100. And if we're looking at a commercial or an industrial development, a permitted use fee is $200. And then there are mandatory advertising costs, which range from $25 to $75. So looking at our safety codes fees, safety codes fees are a little bit different because the department contracts a third party to provide the building permit issuance and the safety codes inspections. So we split our fees 50-50. When considering fees for this category, it's important to know that the contract is up for renewal in 2025, and our fees must be competitive and economically viable to encourage our qualified applicants. So when comparing Lacombe's fees to our regional municipalities, many of whom which use a third-party contracted safety codes or a third-party safety codes contractors, 97% of our fee types are below the median. And most of our fee values are 50% lower than the regional municipalities. So our current rates may make it difficult to attract and retain a qualified partner. So when we're talking our current rates, the minimum safety codes permit price is $75 with a $4.50 levy. So many of our secondary permits for small projects would be $79.50. So options to consider with the safety codes fees would be to simply increase the fees, or potentially to allow contract applicants to propose a different cost-sharing structure. The full list of fees and comparisons to both the regional and the municipal comparators were included as attachments in the report. So our category alignment with city objectives, we again look towards the strategic plan, which emphasizes the need for investor attraction and sustainable service levels. So the current planning and development services fee schedule has been reviewed with this in mind, and administration really evaluated each fee type to determine its applicability and its value. So a list of proposed changes and the supporting rationale was provided as an attachment. So as part of that, administration is proposing several new fees be implemented. So one would be a solar installation permit. These projects are becoming more and more popular, and they don't really fit into any current fee types that we have. Or we're looking at a fee for reopening an expired permit. So this will account for the administrative resources that are required, and it also would encourage applicants to complete their projects in a reasonable amount of time. So we are also proposing to remove some fee types. So this would include the certificate of compliance reissue fee or a zoning confirmation fee. So these services are now provided by the department at no charge, or the information can be found through different resources. So the proposed changes are intended to streamline the fee schedule and to provide clarity to applicants and to hopefully remove some confusion for applicants and staff with the current list. So for preference for public communication, so we spoke with our communications and community engagement coordinator, and a detailed engagement strategy was developed and presented in the report. This approach is consistent with other municipalities when implementing an updated fee schedule. And when we look at future updates, so there's a few considerations when determining the approaches for future updates. Historically, fees reviews have occurred at the direction of council, and they're with no kind of set frequency. This has led to long stretches with no reviews, with the previous occurring in 2008, 2015. And again, we saw pretty large fee increases in 2015 due to these long stretches. So more frequent reviews would allow for a straightforward process and more consistent alignment with council's objectives. Also, these in-depth reviews require substantial staff time. One potential option to minimize this would be to implement an automatically yearly increase tied to a set percentage, for example, or the tax rate increase approved by council for that year. Although this would be quite different from what Lacombe has done in the past, it's not a unique concept in the province. And finally, our next steps. So administration will hear the discussion today and take it into consideration to determine proposed fees and draft up the new fee schedules. So this will include the development of a new planning and development services fee bylaw. After rescinding the current bylaw 168, bylaw 306, and council policy 66 to 10/01/15. The consolidated bylaw is intended to improve implementation of the updated fees and streamline the processes for future updates. The updated bylaw is intended to be presented to council in early Q2 for your consideration. Thank you very much for your time.
And thank you. I've seen a bunch of lights going on here, which is interesting. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So I have some information written down here that I'll probably just try to read verbatim here and make it sound like it's on the fly personality. So thank you, Technician Carpenter and Manager Hackett, for returning with all this additional information after the last presentation. It is appreciated. I opened the one data research spreadsheet before scrolling all the way to the bottom. So I was really grateful when it was actually all separated and all the information was there and I didn't have to be writing down all my notes. So thank you for that. In the previous presentation, I believe it was Mayor Creasy who said that this is a service we are providing for the community. I agree, and I am not interested in the cost recovery method for those fees. Option 2, titled Fee Competitiveness, more aligns with how I would like to see the city operate these. I do support updating our fees and the categories in which they fall, though. When it comes to the categories, I don't have a ton of input on that, other than I support your recommendations for the changes, and as well as I support adding the new fees to them for the some of the ones that were highlighted up there. The solar one is just kind of the one that's stuck in my brain. You obviously know which you added. When it comes to the fees itself, I did have strong suggestions, and then you provided additional information here with cost sharing that I hadn't considered before. So that kind of does change my my original feelings on this. So thank you for that. In the information, it said median. And so we are just taking the exact middle number. We are not taking the average. Okay.
That is correct. We went with the absolute middle.
Okay, thank you. So when it comes to that, I'm not super interested in just the middle number. Based on the comparable communities, a 25% increase with kind of a caveat is my request. I know this may be kind of weird, this caveat, but I'm interested in seeing a 25% increase kind of based on the numbers I saw on the one spreadsheet. And then until or unless it reaches the mean or our closest neighboring comparator. I don't want to see our fees above our neighbors. And do I think having some fees higher will be a deterrent? Likely not. Regardless, I want our community to be seen as inviting, fair, and profitable for developers. I said that, and then you provided the information on the cost sharing. And on those, I guess I am more flexible in that pricing to make it so that we can have quality representation for those processes in the community, though. So that's all I have on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I just have some individual questions to start with. Do developers consider these fees before they come to our municipality? Do we know for a fact that it could be a deterrent if we increase them greatly? Like, I guess I see very little in the report that says a developer says. Just curious about that. Then the couple of fees, and now I'm kind of navigated away from that page. We have a couple that are quite a bit higher than other municipalities, and it has to do with outline plan amendment. And in your report, it says that was to discourage anybody to look at, like it says an MDP amendment, ASP amendment, those, we are way higher. Has the higher cost discouraged people from considering those amendments? And why wouldn't other municipalities then also be considering that in the same regard? I just was curious why we were such an outlier with those few fees. So yeah, I'll just start with those couple questions.
Speaking to your first question about developers, so we didn't include any kind of feedback from developers on the fees. I would say more often than not, we hear that our fees are very affordable and in some industries much lower than the local areas. We hear more from contractors as opposed to developers, but we don't hear very often that our fees are too high and it's discouraging.
Thank you. I will just add to that from the planning fees. I haven't directly had a complaint about the fees. Like when I've dealt with anyone and said that'll be a land use bylaw amendment is $750 or $1,000, I haven't had anyone say, "Whoa, that's too much," or I think by that point, and this kind of ties into your second question, I think by that point they've decided they want to move forward with the project, and so they're expecting some type of fee. But having said that, the fees for municipal development plan and for the downtown area redevelopment plan amendments are high. They're higher than the comparators, and they must have been very high when they were implemented 10 years ago. We didn't find notes of anyone that said these are in to discourage amendments, but I think that is a good assumption that they were to make sure that any inquiries for an amendment were serious. I have worked in the past in a municipality that didn't charge for land use bylaw amendments. This is I'm dating myself, but many years ago. And so sometimes people were not very serious and they would say, well, I have nothing to lose but time applying. And it did impact the neighborhood when vacant properties would continually have bylaw amendments coming forward, or one property in one area, one street and then the next street. And because those residents did want to respond and they did want to be engaged in their community. And so I think some fee does make someone is serious when they pay that fee, whether it's a lot or even a smaller amount. It does show serious intent.
Councillor Koenig.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Thanks very much to Planning and Development for your work on this. It's a lot of work that was done here, and thank you for your efforts. I would echo the comments made by Councillor Dallas. I'm not in any particular hurry to reach the median. We've seen a lot of development over the last few years, especially in the commercial side, but we've been kind of slow out of the gate as far as residential goes. So there seems to be a switch there now. We seem to have a lot more residential development going on, and that's terrific. Our community and this whole country needs more houses, and so it's great to see builders building in Mackenzie and Metcalfe and filling those areas up. So I appreciate all the work that was gone into some of the other just language changes and so forth, the additional fees. I think that's all terrific. The way you've restructured some of this, great work and necessary. But as far as the fees go, I would echo Councillor Dallas. I mean, if we have to go there, I would not want to see more than 25%. I think that's, and you can say that these fees are consequential when it comes to building, but every little thing counts, right? So and with building costs where they are, I mean, the cost of lumber thankfully has come down some, but it still seems to be a bit of a deterrent for some builders to build because of the cost of materials and so forth. So I don't want to add to that by increasing the fees significantly. So I think the work you guys done is terrific, but I don't have an appetite beyond 25%. If that's the will of this group, I certainly won't vote for that, but I can handle that 25% increase. Thank you very much.
Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Kind of the same lines. Our radius of Red Deer and our competition, so to speak, with other municipalities, I think is, I don't want to see us, absolutely don't want to see us higher than Sylvan or Black Falls. But I still think the timeliness of the process and the relationship with our contractors and is far more valuable than raising the fees. And I would rather see adequate staffing, the timeliness of the process, relationship with the developers and the contractors. I hear far more of that and the positivity of what we've changed forward in a great way than I have ever heard about fees. And I think that's what needs to keep that focus on, because I think as administration, there's been changes since our, I guess, my time on council of 6 years. And I think there's been a lot of positive things done in that direction that I think is far more valuable than raising the fees. I don't want to see us higher than our neighbors in any way, shape, or form, but I want to still see that focus on the relationships and the positive improvements we've made in the last several years, and that good direction we've had from administration. I think that is the feedback from that has been far more as far as relation to fees. So,
Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'm feeling like a little bit of an outlier on this one. So I totally appreciate where we're coming from as far as wanting to be developer friendly, and I totally would be on board with that. However, it's all well and good to develop a house, build a house, sell a house, but somebody has to buy it and they have to be willing to pay the taxes. So I think when we're shutting down streams of revenue, and this is maybe relatively minor in the grand scheme of things, but I think we need to prioritize that we are being responsible in receiving revenue so that we can keep our taxes down, because that is one thing that I hear a lot, and I'm sure the rest of you do as well, is a complaint about how high our taxes are. And so when we're requiring us to take more of that out of the pocket of property owners to offset the costs for a developer, that's a little bit problematic for me. I would also say that I do really support the effort here to try and simplify things, because again, that's a concern, a frustration that I've heard from developers and contractors is just, the multiple fees and permits, and this is how complicated the system can be. So I think if you want to set us apart from other communities and make us more attractive, I think a further simplification in that regard would be far more inviting for developers, etc. Than cheaper rates, because I just do. And then the other thing is, I think taking in these further dollars would also allow us to invest in our planning and department personnel. Again, these are the people, these are the faces that developers and contractors are dealing with. And I think that some of this could be, reinvested into that department and making it run even smoother, giving them professional development opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess I see these fees as being something different. And I definitely would not want us to be ahead of especially our regional comparators. And I guess I'd just echo comments that I made kind of offline earlier to some of the members of the department, those of you that created this memo, that I really did appreciate that inclusion of the regional municipality. I know we had asked for that, but I do find that hugely beneficial, especially in a discussion like this, to be able to compare ourselves against communities that are in our area versus just ones that are the same size but across the province, because their realities are totally different. We're in competition with our neighbors, so I think that we need to keep that in mind. So I guess I'm a little bit of an outlier that I do want to see us increase, and not only because I think that that's a more reflection of, what we should be charging, but also I just don't want to fall so far behind again if we're only going to be doing this, every 7 or more years. So those are my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. A quick question, how much revenue do we receive on this?
Thought someone might ask that. From the fees charged, last year we received $254,000, almost 255,000, and that was 36% of our equaled 36% of our overall expenses.
So did we have, and is that including the amounts we have to share with the inspector?
That is before we shared the
Okay,
amount,
before.
but the expenses includes that's considered an expense. So the 36% covering our
is in there.
36% of our
Okay.
cost is in there.
Because
yes.
I mean, that's the one, that the building permit fees and the gas and electrical, those are the fees that we would be sharing with them,
The
correct?
safety codes, yeah.
Yeah, and how much of a percentage of that total is that? Like of those fees compared to the others? Like, is it 50% of all the revenue or 60% of all the revenue?
It is.
So that was just with respect to the building
The total,
permit fees?
the total, like building permits and our permits for electrical, gas and so on, those fees that we share, how much is that a percentage of the total revenues approximately?
Well, I will need a calculator.
Oh, you have that in your mind. your head.
But I can tell you that it's the vast majority
It's the vast
because
majority.
development permits were only $17,000 and the other planning fees for plan amendments, subdivision were around 30,000. So out of that 255, the
So
rest
about
was,
$200,000 would
Yes,
be
exactly.
shared, and
Yes.
then we would give them 50% of that.
yes.
Correct. Okay, so we have a total revenue of $100,000. So when we're talking about changing these fees, the fee structure, the ones that are the ones we should be looking at the most would be the permits, correct? Because we want to ensure we have good inspectors. And we want to make sure that we retain them because that's very important. And those fees we share. The other ones we do not. So, I mean, that's the largest percentage. So I think that should be our focus. And I'm going to ask a question. Do you think 25% increase of our fees, permit fees, would get us good inspectors? Competent inspectors, how's that?
Well, and I'll let Technician Carpenter jump in too. We have a great relationship with our current inspectors, and we've been happy with them. The contract is up in 2025, so there are some other companies, of course, out there. It's hard to say what the rates will be in 2025. Last year, I did attend a safety codes summit or conference and just talking with companies that work across the province in the south or in other parts, like not necessarily in this region. All of them took a greater share than 50%. So that was 3 or 4 companies only that I talked to, and they took 60 or 70%. But I don't know what communities there were, whether that's $100,000 or whether that's with a small community that's only taking in $15,000. But there is a range. 50-50 did sound smaller in that case, but that was a pretty small sample. And I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I would just say when we're considering those fees, I would specifically look to the regional municipalities because the company that we work with, that we have a great relationship with, is based out of Red Deer. And they do work with many municipalities in the region as well. And they typically, lots of the smaller municipalities follow the Alberta Safety Codes Association fee schedule, which is substantially higher than ours. And part of that reason is because they're dealing with a lot of rural municipalities where they have a lot of fuel costs. But if we are looking at this for the safety codes fees with the increases, I would suggest aligning them closer with the regional municipality median, just so that we can continue to have, we can't say we want to have the same company, but they are great to work with. So we'd be in direct competition with those regional municipalities. And when you do look at the fee schedules, there's quite a vast difference of where we currently are and where a lot of the local municipalities are. So I think it is something to be concerned about.
Well, and that's my concern, is that when we're sharing these fees, if it affects the quality of people we get, that becomes an issue for me. And I'd like to ensure that we maintain that, to have good inspectors for building, electrical, gas, the whole water, the whole thing. I think it's extremely important. So this would be my focus, would be on the building permit side, because it's majority of the revenue, and certainly for us, I think as a municipality, the majority of the responsibility to provide good service through our contractors. So I know I wouldn't be adverse to looking that we get to the regional municipality mean for permits to ensure that we are competitive with our neighbors. And I would like to see that done should be done on a yearly basis, a quick look to see where we're at, to ensure we're still there. Thank you.
Councillor Konik.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So just some interesting comments I've heard. So how long have we had the current inspector for?
Longer than I've been here,
Yeah.
but I think this is the second 5-year contract with this company, and I'm just looking to Director Thompson if that rings a bell for him. This is the renewal, and so this would be second 5 years.
I believe is we've had this company for 3 to 5 years, and then prior to that, the previous version was, I think, was 3 years, and then it was a different company before that. So I'd say less than 10 years. It feels about less than 10 years, between 7 and 10 years. We've had the current company.
Okay, thank you. So I guess my point is, so he is a good inspector. I don't want there any inference to be that because our rates are low, he's lousy. No, he is good. And he doesn't seem to be, he's been with us. I mean, I can appreciate what you're saying, but I don't think that, if we didn't increase or increase marginally, he's going to walk away, so to speak, right? Yeah, I agree with Councillor Gulliston to a point. I can see us raising them, but I don't think there should be any sort of, we should be in a panic that if we don't raise them, we can't get anybody good, correct? Like, I'm assuming there are other inspectors. I mean, the rates have to be comparable, but he's been with us for a long time. I guess my point is I don't see him walking away if we don't increase the rates by 100%. This is my point. And then further to Councillor Hibbs's points about, I can appreciate increasing revenue, but even if we went to 100% increase, that's not going to be enough of an increase to offset a tax increase, is my opinion. We're not generating that much revenue. That was my only other comment I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. So just so we're clear, we do have a contract with a company, not an individual, and that is comprised of many inspectors, of which we have 1 or 2 that we use more often than not here, just so there's no confusion there. There's been a lot of talk about this. I'm not totally sold that an increase in cost is necessarily going to reflect what type of a company, and therefore the individuals that they put forward in our regard. We're going to have competent people regardless. When it comes time for contract time, they may just adjust the portion that they put forward as being reasonable. If we wanted to cut all our permit fees in half, perhaps they'd want all of it, or 120% of it, whatever. So I mean, I don't think that really suits our purposes today. And as much as I don't want to increase any permit costs, I think that we need to reflect reality and be closer to our regional municipality numbers. And as was said earlier, I think by Councillor Gullikson, on those permitting fees that are certainly the bulk, not only of the work, but of the revenue and expense in that department, and therefore the most critical. I could see them being bumped up to that regional number. It's difficult for me to say that across the board for every department, because there are many examples where I don't think that we need to see that kind of either a reduction or an increase just to say that we're the same as a regional municipality. But because that is an important category, I could see them being bumped up to more of that 7 something range. But whatever that that percentage may be. I'm uncomfortable just to say it across the board for the entire category, whatever that may be, or the entire department for that matter, because it just doesn't make sense in some circumstances because of the vast differences that we see as we go through them. So I guess my preference would be to see the new numbers and where it did vary significantly from those regional numbers on any given percentage, some sort of justification or an adjustment to those numbers so that they weren't so far out of whack. And I'm not going to go through 100 of them here and do that now, but is there a reason why we list so many different categories with the same amounts to them? Like if a building permit fee is so much per $1,000 and it's the same for 6 different categories, why isn't it just so much per $1,000 of construction, regardless if it's residential or commercial or reno or industrial or whatever? I mean, for most people, these are confusing enough, but by making these categories this big, let's consolidate them where we can and remove some of the more mundane stuff. I'm not nearly as fired up about some of the development. I'm sorry, some of the planning fees, not to suggest they're not important, but they really don't occur that often enough. I actually don't mind the higher numbers that was for the justification given. Those higher level plans like the MDP or ASP, they can remain high. I don't see that as being a deterrent to development. Anybody that had something that major that one of those plans would be affected, quite honestly, a few $1,000s in that instance is really not that big a deal. It's not that critical. In saying that, everyone is affected who chooses to build by the numbers that we put forward for building permit fees on a per $1,000 basis. So those ones I would like to keep under control and see them not exceed our regional comparator median. In short, I guess what I'm saying is, yes, I'm afraid we are going to have to see some increases. However, to give a single number increase and have it be a blanket across the board, I don't see as being workable at this time. So we're going to have a little work to do yet, in my opinion. Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I echo exactly what you just said. I put 25% question mark. I'm not comfortable with just going with a blanket 25% increase because yes, we do have those $3,000 fees attached to the amendments. They don't have to be increased by 25%. So sadly, I'm suggesting that you might have to look at fee by fee or the category fee type by fee type, and that we just get ourselves to that regional municipality median as close as possible. That would be my desire. So some of them will increase at 50%. And then others won't increase at all. And that might be very tedious, but it would be what I would desire. And then secondly, with the review, I kept saying to myself today, why does this get dropped for 9, 10, how many years? And so I would like there to be a plan for a review of these fees in a more orderly fashion so that that we don't seem like we're so out of touch, but I don't endorse a percentage increase each year because let's say our regional municipalities aren't increasing their fees and then we are gradually increasing every year. Before we know it, we're suddenly above the median. So, but I do really endorse reviewing on a regular something basis. What that is, I encourage I would like to see that. Then back to the actual document for the report to committee. I really liked your 4 points and looking at what is the desire of council. Cost recovery is not important to me as a councillor within reason. I do think we want to be in the business of development or encouraging development because ultimately that will generate taxes. But yet on the flip side, I do endorse this increase, as I said earlier, because we don't want to be way out of line of other municipalities that that almost could be perceived as being somewhat foolish. So I'd rather not be there. But thank you for all those ideas. I'm not going to go through them point by point, but I do endorse the fewer types of fees too, like the mayor was indicating. So thank you for this work.
So there's been a variety of input. Have you been able to glean some similarities in all of those to be able to come back with us with a closer representation of our wishes?
Yes, I think so. I might have to watch the video a few times, but I think so.
If it only takes a few, you've done very well. CEO Gowdy?
So just so there isn't surprises, we'll be coming back with essentially a list of the fees, their proposed rates. Will also include the regional municipalities. I heard that that is quite consistently more of what council is interested in comparing against for this particular item. So we'll have the regional median, we'll have our current fee, and we'll have our proposed fee. And then we will include a column that says what percentage that is, but it'll vary between each one, where we're trying to target kind of that median rate, not a blanket rate percentage increase. And then a plan for a more frequent system of updating more frequently so that it's not 10 years at a time between updates. That makes sense as well. And we'll be bringing that back later in the summer, I think is the idea. Is that the, yeah.
Yes, Q2, late spring, I believe.
And in those instances where there is a substantial difference, some sort of justification, I'm not after a big report, but I mean, some of these, there is some percentage wise, they look ridiculous, but dollar wise, it might not be that much, but some sort of justification, there may be reasons why, but I expect the council will want to know why. Councillor Hoekstra, you had your light on earlier. You're fine. Councillor Dallas.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Maybe this is just the way I see things, but would there be a possibility to include the mean or the average as well instead of just the median? That's just the way I want to, I would like to see it as well.
Yes, we can add a column for the mean as well. You're welcome.
Anything additional with the planning and development review update? Very good. We'll go through our upcoming meetings briefly here. All are in council chambers here at City Hall at 5:30 p.m. And all are regular meetings. They are on Monday, March 11th, Monday, March 25th, and Monday, April 8th. For anybody tracking that, watching online. And I believe that takes us down to our in-camera items, of which we have 2 currently. Councillor Hoekstra?
I move that we move into camera,
Thank you.
in camera.
All those in favor? Show of hands. Thank you. Very good.